I am Alana from Chicken House Press, and this is Writer's Chat. So, Rivenoda.
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
'Cause I want to make sure I'm saying it right.
I pronounce it Revernoda.
Rivenoda. Okay,
Yeah.
that's important for me to know.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That's how I pronounce it.
Rivenoda.
It's a made up word. So
Where did
um,
it come from? Like the
I
Noda,
just
the Noda kind of makes sense. I got that.
yeah. I think Rever is, I can't remember. It was a long time ago that I came up with it, but I think it has something to do with dreaming.
Okay.
So
Reverie.
it was kind of like, yeah, fantasy dreamer, like a dreamer who has this special ability with notes and frequencies and stuff.
Right.
And I just thought it kind of had a nice ring to it, the word. So
Well, and it's so unique. It's gonna
yeah,
set it
I think you
apart
want
right
something
there.
that's like sounds good, has like the ring to it, and then also makes some kind of sense. And I think yeah, so it was just a good combo.
And so you said years ago. So
Yeah,
when was
that
this
was
idea planted?
Well, I think back in about 2017, something like that, I took a creative writing course at University of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And after that course was over, I wrote this like small short story. I think it was called Double Bubble Gum and Blue Raspberry or something, and Bullies or something
Yeah.
like that. And it was like 12 pages, and I sent it to a writer friend of mine, Ward, who actually lives in Kitchener now.
Mm-hmm.
And he really liked it. So I was like, oh, maybe I can turn this into a longer short story. And then it just kind of kept expanding from there.
So since 2016.
2016, yeah, 2016, 2017, off and on. Yeah.
And how much
Yeah.
time would you give to writing? Was it just kind of like a hobby in the background? I know you have so many other projects that you work on. So
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't like a head down focus, intense
No,
writing. Yeah.
no. Well, at times it was.
Mhm.
Like I was reading a lot at the time, and so I was just in the real mode of like reading and writing.
Mhm.
I was reading a lot of Ken Kesey, and I was just inspired to like just be writing at that time. And so it was off and on. Sometimes I would write for long periods of time consistently for like days or maybe a couple of weeks or something, and then I would take like long breaks from the material and then come back to it eventually. And that so kind of waxed and waned on that for a while, that process.
Was it hard to come back? Like after you would take breaks, did it take you a while to get back in?
It took me a pretty long time at one point to remember like how I was writing it
Yeah.
at the beginning, because I was in a pretty good flow for like the first half of the
Mhm.
book. And
Mhm.
then when it came to the middle section, where there's kind of like a bit of a different part,
Yep.
I wrote that, and then when I came back, I was like, oh man, like I just totally forgot what everything sounded like and all that. So that took a bit of time, but nothing too crazy. It comes pretty natural because a lot of it's kind of inspired by my childhood anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
ask because
yeah,
it's set in the 90s.
yeah, yeah.
So
They would have been, they're maybe a little older than I would have been at
yeah,
that time,
yeah,
but close. Maybe
yeah.
it's like how I imagined myself when I was like a little younger than I would have been in like grade 4 or 5,
During that
kind of
time.
at the, yeah,
Mhm.
like in my mind, that's, I don't even know if that makes sense, but like during that actual time, I would have been much younger, but I was kind of basing it on my experience.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what what really drew you to placing it in the 90s?
I think the big thing was I just didn't really want to be bothered about technology.
Mhm.
But that was actually kind of secondary to just, well, for me, the 90s are just classic because they're my childhood, and I have so many nostalgic memories of the 90s in my childhood town and all of the adventures and stuff. And then also just like, yeah, for me, the 90s is kind of that era that I look back to, and like people who were born in my generation, 1992-ish, around there, everyone kind of looks back to the 90s. It's kind of like a golden age, I think, now.
It was a
The
little more
beginning of, very beginning of everything. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Double Bubble? What's your personal relationship to that?
I do remember having it as a kid. I actually, when I was younger, my next door neighbor, two houses over, had a little clubhouse for a while in the upper part of her garage. There's actually two different clubhouses, but the one who was just next door, she had a little thing of Double Bubble in the clubhouse, and she charged everybody 5 cents.
Oh my goodness.
So I just remember it. I can remember it from that, the blue and yellow and pink packages.
Yeah, the way that you weaved in little things that, as I read it, I thought, oh, for sure, these are your memories coming through. And it just added so much depth and believability to the characters and the action, because like I could see it, and I grew up there too, so it felt
totally
familiar, and really, really special. And I think kids,
that's great to hear.
Yeah, kids today are missing out on some of that kind of play and fun, right? Because now it's all
for sure
on their screens. Do kids have clubhouses anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I also grew up in a small town, so I kind of had that. I have that memory because of being in a small town. I spent most of my life in the city after that, actually, it feels like. So I think that's another kind of element that probably a lot of people miss, growing up in the city, but they kind of look at it as this other world or something, that doesn't really exist in the city. So but yeah, I it's a pretty authentic voice to my own life and stuff. So I guess that's where that comes from. And also I think from reading the Ken Kesey while I was writing it, I took a lot of inspiration from like the way he voiced his characters, obviously just for a younger audience.
Yeah. And the way that came across is so really believable. Like you can really hear the banter between the boys, and
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Movies. So
yeah,
there's a lot of similarities to some of those classic 90s movies, some of the bullying stuff, things like that are timeless. Movies that were made, like they're made decades ago, but those kind of themes shine through no matter what. So it did feel a little bit like it played out like a 90s movie, which is really fun. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's that's like the Sandlot is one of my favorites. And just like you said, just kind of all the whole atmosphere and just vibe, I guess, of those stories and movies, and just the atmosphere they capture and the energy and stuff, the excitement and the possibilities, I think, are too big, because when the young stories are like that, everything's very imaginative and fun,
and everything's possible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so the movies are big for me because I'm also a photographer, and obviously I do video editing, so I've worked in film for a long time now. So movies I take a lot of inspiration from movies, just in general, for everything. So especially for painting, kind of like you can kind of point at a movie and it just encapsulates a whole world, in so many different ways, just very quickly. So
yeah, that's great. I could totally see this being turned into a movie someday. I would love that.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that would be fantastic, right?
Yeah, let's get it optioned.
It's got all of the ingredients.
But everything you need.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun. Do you ever see yourself taking on a movie project like that? Like, If funding was dropped
Honestly,
in your lap.
yeah, if funding was dropped in my
Yeah.
lap, I don't even know like what I would, if the opportunity ever came along to do some crazy project like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what like my involvement would be. Like as I work in film and I get older and stuff, I'm just more aware of putting together teams and all of that kind of stuff. So I mean, I'd love to at the very least do some directing.
Yeah.
I think probably on something like that, or just kind of hang around and have
Watch it
everybody be
happen.
making it and just kind of just watch it happen and
Yeah.
be in the background, give
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be the most fun probably.
Yeah. No work, just show up and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just walk around and kind of look at everything going on.
Yeah.
That would be incredible, though. I think, I mean, doing something like that would be a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
Making a long, incredible project like that, and for a story like this too, it's a lot of work goes
Well, the
into
scope
those.
of it and the worlds you have to create and
Yeah, totally,
yeah.
big time. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's a book right now. Cause I mean, that was another reason why I kind of wanted to write a book, because I was like, I can tell any story I want and budget is no
Right.
hindrance,
Words
right?
are
So I can,
free. Yeah.
yeah, I can, exactly. No CGI needed.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
amazing what you can paint with words.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's incredible. It's incredible. You can really do anything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Because
amazing.
it's a full color world. Like there is no, it's so easy to picture and to get right inside it. So
Mm,
congratulations, because
thank you. It's really
that,
nice to
that
hear that.
is hard to do. And I think a lot of times people fall short, maybe because they don't have as much of an imagination or aren't willing to kind of push boundaries of like maybe don't trust the reader to suspend their belief enough to just
Right.
tell it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like you ignored all of that. And
Yeah.
I was just like, here
I
it is.
I definitely ignored a lot of that as long as it was the magic and that kind of stuff that hung me up for a long time,
Yeah.
just figuring out because I had read a lot of adult fantasy and sci-fi that gets really particular and just expository kind of about the rules of magic and all these different things. And I think I decided, like, for kids books, I read all the Narnia books again, and I was like, you don't need to get too into the weeds about explaining how exactly the science is working and like all that stuff. You kind of forget about that. And in some cases that stuff's just boring anyway. If
Well,
you can
and kids
believe enough
are
that it's
so,
working,
yeah, kids
then
just
it's
trust.
it's okay.
They believe
Yeah,
in
exactly.
them and they're not going to question it. They're going to be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I like reading those books too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Like a lot of my favorite books are more on that side of things, where you don't get too
Mhm.
bogged down in
Yeah.
those kinds of details.
You're just
It's just more
observing the
about like the
world
whole
as it
world,
happens.
what's going on, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of just, I mean, like the a lot of that stuff kind of comes in the second half of the whole book, the book as a whole too. Like the first half is kind of a lot more just character building and setup and
Yeah.
stuff with the kids, like in the quote unquote ordinary world,
Mhm.
before all the craziness happens.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's why
so
we care. That's why we care when they go on.
yeah,
We're already
exactly.
invested, right?
Yeah, I think I just dove in and just went for it. Yeah.
Did you write the story chronologically? Like, did you start with just the boys in the small town summer?
Yeah, yeah.
Did
The
you know
first
about the
scene,
neighbor, the mysterious
um,
neighbor?
no, yeah. The very
Mhm.
first time I wrote it, it was just the clubhouse, and it was Sammy and Howie and Tommy, and there was actually another bully,
Mhm.
a different person, as well. But that obviously, like, a lot of that stuff changed. But yeah, originally it was just the clubhouse and the bully,
Mhm.
and kind of all of those details from, and that's what people liked about it. When I sent that short story to a few
Yeah.
people, they were all like, "Oh, this like feels really real and it
Yeah.
feels
That
good."
tension, that childhood tension. that everyone
Yeah.
can relate to, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think you'll have the adults who grew up in that time who are going to see themselves on the page. And then you're going to have kids who can relate to just being kids. Like, this is how kids interact, no matter what. Like, there's no bullying policy, right? But that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, and I
We
mean
all
another
know.
like really important theme to me was like how people can change and stuff, you know.
Yeah,
That's
that's
yeah,
really
that was
powerful.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because there is that ending moral message that I think is so important that you're sending people away with. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
believe in people and believe in yourself and give second chances. All of that I think is really important and powerful, and we need positive messages today because the world is garbage.
It's crazy. It
Yeah,
is absolutely crazy. Yeah. And how more, it's so innocent and just, they're all kids
yeah,
and the change can really happen quickly,
yeah,
I think. And
yeah.
but yeah, that's honestly like my favorite part, I think, now about the whole are
Mhm.
those things, like the messages and what's kind of just really into the story as you're reading it.
Yeah, and was
The
that in?
stuff that you don't even really notice, it's
Yeah,
just a lot of it was pretty intentional stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of that stuff was super intentional.
Mhm.
And it was also, part of the certain characters and stuff, how all of that gets facilitated. And
Right.
so the different personalities interacting and trying to like actually have different personalities and then think about how they can enhance each other eventually, right? So that was all. I did definitely think about all of that from the beginning. I always want to try and put stuff into my art, whatever it is, that is some positive stuff, good
Yeah,
messaging, and yeah, just positivity in
yeah.
some way.
Good. That's refreshing.
Yeah. 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 But I try to make it not like blatant and obvious and
Oh,
lame. Like I try to make it integrated and, like
yeah,
I said, where
organic.
yeah, it's just part of the
Mhm.
characters and you're just reading it and it just happens naturally.
Yeah, yeah. Music. So music is a huge part of your life, and
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
music plays a big role in the book. So have you always been musical, like your whole life? Did you grow up musical?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I played piano when I was a kid and then stopped for a while and then played it again. And I also sing and play a couple other instruments.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's always been around, kind of
Mhm.
in and out like many things. You only have so many hours in the day.
Right.
But
Beautiful.
yeah, always around. And actually just the other day I was down at the local music store and I was thinking about starting up some piano lessons again.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, yeah. Instead of just practicing by myself, just, do a lesson with a teacher and practice that way.
Yeah.
Uh, and play on a nice upright instead of a keyboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, music's big, always been a big inspiration as well.
Mhm. And has any of the music that you've written been inspired by the story?
No, the music that I do is pretty different from the stuff I
Mhm.
think that or at least from this piece of writing. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty different.
Yeah.
They're pretty different. Yeah, I go to a lot of different places with my music and that stuff and talk about different things.
Mhm.
Um, and this is definitely, yeah, more of like me, the author.
Yeah. Yeah. The
In
whole
the book.
separate
Yeah,
side of
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole separate side. Yeah.
Is there like a band from the 90s or a song from the 90s that you think really, really suits the book or would be your soundtrack on your soundtrack for the
Yeah,
book?
that's interesting. I can't think of any particular songs, but literally any of the music from Sandlot. And a lot of that stuff that I remember from Sandlot is just kind of like maybe it's like bluesy, kind of
Mhm.
like bluesy, jazzy stuff. It's actually way older than the 90s because Sandlot is obviously set much before the
Right.
90s. It came out in the 90s, obviously, but it's even older music. So I think that's the stuff that I think about when it comes to this stuff. But like as a kid, I think I was listening to like Sum 41 and Linkin Park and stuff.
Right.
So not what I would imagine for
Well, that's a
Reverend
different mood. Different mood.
Yeah.
So Atwell is your big your villain.
Yeah.
Was he inspired? Maybe you don't want to answer that, but was he inspired by an adult in your life that you grew up with? Like where did you find him in your imagination?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. He's not, I always just imagined him just as a villain. Like I never really
you weren't picturing someone.
No, I wasn't picturing anyone. I kind of created him he was actually the first, after the little short story. The book was called Atwell for like the whole time I was writing it.
Really?
All the way up, and
I'm glad you changed it.
All the way up. It was actually my mom who said like, "Oh, you should call it Reverend Oda," and I'm like, no, it's got to be Atwell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really that was the working title forever.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just Atwell for forever. It was called Atwell. So that's funny. But yeah, he was just an amalgamation, I think, of a bunch of characters that I had because I wanted to write a story that had like a really lovely kind of wise old wizard type and so I kind of got to do that, but at the same time, obviously he's also a villain.
Yeah, you got to turn it on its head.
Yeah, and I think when I was writing it, I was just like, man, he can't be like a good guy. I think for the first while, I thought, oh, he's going to be this good guy, and then I realized he can't. So then there's like no story to,
right.
There's no real story, so he can't really be like that. But I think I took inspiration from some, a bunch of different things that I've like read and seen over the years, just kind of like, oh, a little of this, a little of that, for Atwell. Yeah.
There was something kind of ominous about him, even when he was good, like he appeared good, and he reminded me of a Stephen King villain, like just a kind of creepy and almost like a shadow, but you can't really put your finger on it. And so that watching his journey within the story was really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I like him as a character a lot because he's got a lot of different sides.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about doing a whole book just about him. I actually wrote a bunch of extra stuff about him that's not in the book, just to like figure out what his childhood was like and stuff.
Oh, that's exciting.
But I like Atwell. He's a very interesting guy.
Yeah.
And he's kind of creepy and weird but also like kind of cool. He's like kind of an interesting guy. I mean, there's bits and pieces of myself are kind of in characters as well. Probably there's a little shred of me in Atwell, I think, more so than any other character, weirdly.
Oh, interesting.
But he was fun. He was like the most fun, I think, to write because I had to do a bit more thinking.
Well, and he had a whole story, like a real backstory, right? So
yeah,
I like that you did choose to share a nice little chunk of his backstory, because that makes the reader struggle even more with that tension of, well, I care about him, because look, like his motivation almost seems good in the beginning, right? Like it's almost
yeah.
It's
a bit sad or something, like he's a bit, he's a bit sad, and I don't know, he's interesting. I like what his character kind of represents metaphorically. Like when I just think about his character, aside from me writing the book, I just think, oh, it could represent this and it could represent that. Like there's a lot of different themes that play with his how he reflects kind of the world today. He represents a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
lot
there's
of
a
ideas
lot of
about.
conversation around that. Like if you ever got invited into a classroom or something, that would be really interesting to see how,
Yeah,
yeah, how kids respond to a character like that.
yeah,
Because they'll pick up on things, right? Even more than adults sometimes.
yeah.
Um,
Greed and all that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
That's the obvious one. Greed. Yeah.
I think that's great. There's so much depth there. The game of chess.
Aha.
So
Yes.
it plays quite like a kind of background role, but it's pretty important to the whole story. So
Yep. Yep.
what's the significance of chess in your life? Is there, or did you just choose it randomly?
It was a bit of random, but also I played chess with my dad when I was a kid, and he had these really beautiful, really heavy kind of like brass or silver chess pieces.
Yeah.
So I think I was just thinking to myself, oh, what was around when I was a kid, and like
Yeah.
that chess set was in my memory. So
Mhm.
I think it came from there. So kind of a bit random, but like a lot of other things, it was kind of pulled from that house, at my childhood house.
Yeah.
And I moved around a lot as a kid too. So a lot of that stuff in my mind is very just like, oh, it's that house, and it's kind of separated from, it feels like a long time ago. So it's
Yeah.
almost a bit of a movie in my head at this point anyway.
Sure. What's next?
What's next? As far as writing goes, I have no idea.
Mhm.
Um, I have been working on a couple things, but nothing really too seriously. I started writing like a parable a while ago, about fear and how someone might deal with that, and it's kind of like tied up into this story. But other than that, I've been working on some music, but mostly just video editing, just work.
Yeah. Just
Is morning till night,
wow.
morning till night, pretty much right now.
Yeah.
And like thinking about writing, it was good that I don't know how people could write a book when they're working full time.
Yeah.
Like I,
You give
I
up
I don't
everything
know how
else.
you would. It's hard. Like I had some times where I wrote 5-6 hours straight, and
Yeah.
if I wasn't able to do that, like I would never have been able to finish the book. Like
Mhm.
to have these like really long writing sessions sometimes.
Right. Did COVID affect your creative, like your access to time? Did it change or
I can't remember if I think I did all the writing before COVID happened.
did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a pre-COVID book.
Yeah.
It was finished probably like just before COVID hit. And then there was some editing and a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff, but
All that
I
after
don't
work.
think that, yeah, I think the bulk of everything was already written. There was a big like 6 or 7 month gap, like writing that last, I think basically 100 pages or something.
Yeah.
But that was it, and that was done just before COVID. I think I didn't do much writing during COVID. Actually, I was working on more music during COVID for the majority of that. Luckily, we're out of that now, kind of. I guess I don't know.
And are you
Who
playing?
knows what's going on?
Do you play live anywhere now?
I actually am working on some live stuff with an actress friend of mine from Toronto. She wants to
Mhm.
be doing some live stuff as well. So we're learning some covers together, and we
Oh,
might play those live somewhere in Toronto at some point. That's a little side project right now.
mhm. But always something
Yeah.
creative on the go.
I try to always have something creative on the go. Yeah, I kind of can't help it. And if I need to be working on something, so I try to have little projects that I can work on while I'm doing heavy amounts of work,
Mhm.
so that I can just leave it and pop over and chip away at it here and there. Like a book
Yeah.
is so enveloping that you have to be so immersed in everything going on that you really can't switch gears too much. I
Yeah.
find anyway, like I do a lot of, oh, I'm working on this, and then I switch over to this project, and then I switch over to that project, and I'm back
Yeah.
and forth, and different things going on. With a book or writing, you really can't do that. Like the second you do that, it's all gone. Like
Yeah.
at least for me, the way I wrote Revernota was all just I would just sit down and write. Like I never did any outlining or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I would sometimes make notes, or I would do rough drafts, or I use a typewriter sometimes too to
Oh,
write
did
out.
you?
Because it was actually helpful for coming up with ideas. I would sit down and I would
Yeah.
have an idea of a scene or something, and I would write, and then you can't backspace or change or anything like that.
Yeah.
You just got to get into a flow state pretty much. But it's interesting that you mentioned Stephen King too, because he was I read his book on writing.
I
think.
loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I read that maybe a
Yeah.
year before, right around the time I was kind of taking that class and stuff before I started writing.
Yeah.
And Stephen King's characters are also just like great. He has a way of doing that atmospheric.
Yeah.
He really
All
makes you feel
mood.
like you're all mood.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there
Yeah.
any other tools that you utilize? Like if you read On Writing, were there any other books that you read that helped you?
On writing was big, and my teacher actually at the U of T writing class, I think her name was Ibby Kaslik.
Okay.
She was awesome. She was really inspiring and gave me some really like positive feedback on some stuff that I wrote.
Good.
And so that was good. That was inspiring. Other tools, I mean, yeah, just Ken Kesey, honestly.
Mhm.
Just his books were big for me. Like he kind of taught me how to write good dialogue, like
Mhm.
believable dialogue,
Yeah.
and also kind of like sometimes maybe some funny dialogue as well, stuff that
Yeah.
could make you laugh a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
I learned all that from reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Sometimes a Great Notion.
Mhm.
So those two books were big.
And I know that your mother is a writer.
Yeah.
So how closely, like, do you allow her into your process? Do you think it helps
She
you?
doesn't know too much about my process. She just gets to review the raw material.
Sure.
As far as what I do to get there, I mean, she knows a little bit about that. Like she read Sometimes a Great Notion because I recommended it and stuff like that. Like, so she knows Ken Kesey and those types of inspirations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Mostly she's a great person to like send stuff to.
Mhm.
I used to send her a lot of music as well, like when I was kind of first starting back into making my own music. Good critic, like
Yeah.
harsh when she needs to be harsh, but then also, not too harsh when as
You
well.
need
Like
a nice balance there.
yeah, you need
Yeah.
the balance. So yeah, she's a good editor, and she was tremendously helpful like throughout the whole process of
Mhm.
finishing, Reverend Oda and getting it done.
Yeah.
And but we have very, very different processes in terms of like just how we write and how we go
Yeah.
about generating ideas and stuff. And she's much more structured when she's writing a book. And I used to tell her when I was writing, she'd be like, write this scene, write it. And I'm like, no, I need to literally think about this for probably like maybe 2-3 months or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Sit
like,
in it.
yeah, just let it bounce around everyday life, think about it here and there. We definitely, but sometimes that's good. the what's it called, tension, or the different approaches. Yeah.
Was she writing as you were growing up, or was that something she started later in life?
I know that she has been writing since like she was a kid.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that she would have had too much time when I was a kid working and looking after me, and
Sure.
probably sometimes looking after my brothers as well. My two I have two half brothers.
Okay.
So I just can't imagine that she had too much time when I was a kid to be writing. There was always like artistic stuff around, and
Yeah.
so I think I got a lot of my inspiration from all of that.
Yeah.
And she played piano a lot too, actually, when I was a kid. I remember that more.
Yeah. So the arts
that was
they were a big part of your
for sure.
Your home culture growing up.
Just everything. My dad was an artist too, and he was a great writer himself. And big inspiration too, of course, the book's dedicated to him. So yeah.
Well, what did you think of the proof?
Oh, I thought it was great. Like when I got it in my hands, I opened it up and I was just like, oh wow, it's a real book.
Yeah, that's a great moment.
Yeah, great feeling. And when I opened it up, it just all looked so, I just didn't question anything. I just,
Yeah.
oh, this looks like a book like I just grabbed off the shelf. It's amazing.
Then we've done our job.
Yeah. And I was happy with the way everything like came out in terms of it looks, the colors look great, like the cover looks awesome, font, and just like everything, the whole process was interesting getting to what it is now. And all the editing that you did too was great as well. Those minor things are like all the different stuff that you found is so crucial, because it's so you miss them.
Yeah.
No, like, yeah, those things are big, because I mean, if you're reading something and it's like, oh, but this was, it just takes you out of the,
That's right.
takes you out of the world. And you want it to be, if anybody looks anything up, then it all checks out.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, wow, they really, made sure it was all tight and everything. Yeah. So I appreciate that a lot. And just working with you in general has been great.
Good.
Yeah, the back and forth, the understanding, and just everything has been awesome.
Was there anything that surprised you about the process, or made you nervous?
Yeah, I'm always totally nervous about anything that I make. I get these days, I'm just like, I've kind of tried to let some of that go in terms of just, being more neutral about it. Now it's out there, it's, so that's always nerve-wracking. Oh, someone's reading my stuff, like, is this good or is this crap?
Right? You put so much into it, and there's bits of you in every character, I'm sure. So it's hard.
There are for sure, and other people too. Won't name any names, but there's people in there for sure. There's a variety of people in there. Yeah, how did you feel like when you first read the book? I'm curious about that. Like before you did any editing, like when you just first read the manuscript.
It was in pretty good shape when it first came to me. I like the whole structure of the story was really sound, and your world was really believable. So I really felt like my job was just catching some of those little like timeline things and a little bit of passive voice, those little things, just tighten that stuff up. So like I've dealt with some manuscripts that were not so user friendly. So this is kind of a refreshing thing, and it felt like you really knew your voice. And so I don't know if that's
definitely all me. The grammar and all that stuff is mostly all my mom. Editing she kind of edited along the way, which made it a bit easier in the end, because I was writing in sections anyway. So but yeah, the voice was all me. So that's really nice to hear. I mean, that was my main concern the whole time. I was like, does any of this make any sense? Like what? So Alistair read it and he thought it made sense. So I was like, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And then you also so I was just like, oh, man, how much do you have to explain this whole thing about explaining like every detail, but I mean, it's already fairly long. It couldn't even really be much longer. So
and you wouldn't need more, right? Because it slows down the story. You just
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So when you first read it, you liked it. You thought it was cool.
Well, it was like nothing I'd ever read. So right away, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's fun to be able to market that and promote that and say, you guys, you need to check this out because this is not on the shelf anywhere else. So
it's cool to be excited.
Yeah. So no matter what, I think you should be so proud of what you've done. Like, it's been a long journey for you. It's
a nice thing to have accomplished. I'm glad that I am able to check that off. The fact that it's here and it's actually physically real in the world is really, really, it's not just a PDF document on a hard drive, is really awesome. Totally excited about it. And I mean, it does feel like another life at this point. Like it feels like a different version of me finished that book. I feel like a different person nowadays.
You've moved on from that.
Yeah, in a way I have. I was actually thinking about a totally different novel the other day about writing a story about a boxer or something.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, like a a fake biopic of like some really interesting fictional boxer or something.
Yeah.
I mean, this fantasy is always going to be my favorite thing.
Mhm.
So, and
That's
also there's
good
a lot of
list
stuff
for-
in here that I think young kids, you know, there's cool stuff in here for imaginations to be
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, that's an interesting idea. And like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, it's a cool introduction to some interesting, neat ideas
Yeah.
for kids in that age group, I think, to
Look at the
explore.
world a little bit differently.
Yeah.
That's good. If that's what happens, that's job well done, right? Like if you spark something.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
Good. Thank you
Nice
for
to sit
being
down with
willing.
you as well.
Actually,
Yeah, of course.
you
Oh my gosh.
face-to-face. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just over email.
Yeah. It's like, are you really a person? I don't know.
All right.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much.
All right.
For
We're on
everything.
the home stretch.
Exciting.
Yeah, good. Okay, have a good
Okay.
night.
You too. We'll chat soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Go to chickenhousepress.ca/bookstore to order your copy of this highly anticipated book.
Hi, thanks for considering buying my book, Revernota. If you're one of the first 20 people to buy the book, we will put a coupon inside of it that is redeemable at any time for a FaceTime or a Skype or a Zoom with me. And we can talk about Revernota after you finish reading it. We can talk about another one of your favorite books, or we can talk about anything else, anything under the sun. So buy a book, be one of the first 20 people, and get an unexpirable coupon for a video call with me.